Jai Anilo Premadano Karma Kacho.
So welcome all of you to today's evening session program, which has been kindly arranged by our dear friend Radhesham Prabhu. So we are coming from the Hare Krishna temple, which is called the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. As many of you might know, this was founded by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada in 1966 in New York. Actually, this is not something new, but this is an age-old Vaishnava tradition, one of the four authorized Vaishnava sampradayas, starting from Lord Brahma, and which teaches the teachings of Lord Krishna, and especially as taught by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Lord Krishna himself. But Prabhupada, he for the first time, he brought these teachings outside the outside India and brought to the West. And within no time, the society, the Hare Krishna movement spread all over the world. And today, there's hardly any country on this globe which doesn't have devotees of Krishna. So not only Indians are now devotees of Krishna, but practically everyone from all communities, all countries are becoming Krishna devotees. So Prabhupada, when he came, he initiated many disciples, and we are very fortunate today that one of the very original, one of the first disciples of His Divine Grace, and since only he accepted the renounced order of sannyas, and since then he has been traveling all over the world, preaching this Krishna consciousness and overlooking different aspects of the society. Prabhupada also appointed him as one of the first governing body commissioners, and he looks after the ISKCON temples in Texas, in Fiji Islands, Australasia, in China, Hong Kong, and some parts of India. He is also a prolific author. He has written many books, like Servant of the Servant, which is a compilation of his different associations with Prabhupada. Also, he has written many dramas like Jagannath Natakam and the final pastimes of Sri Prabhupada according to the Vedic Natya Shaili. Also, he has worked on a book called Science of Yoga, and I think we have some copies of that book today. It's an interesting story about a Chinese boy, how he gets convinced about Krishna consciousness. And presently Maharaj is working on the sequel to that novel. He is also one of the initiating spiritual masters in our society. He was one of the original initiating gurus appointed by Prabhupada to carry on the movement and continue this disciplic succession. So we are very fortunate that Maharaj is with us today. He is going to stay in Texas for next few months, and I would request all of you that when he comes to Houston, all of you please try to get his association. So now, so this Sunday also, he will be speaking at the temple at 6 o'clock. So I would request all of you to come to the Sunday, also to the Hare Krishna temple. So Maharaj will speak on Bhagavad Gita.
Sri Chaitanya Manubhistam Stapitam Jigabhutale Swayam Rupakadamanam Dadati Svapandam Shikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Jatapatakamanam Sri Guru Vaishnavam Sri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatam Nitam Sritam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijna Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam. Today we will speak on the Bhagavad Gita. There's a very popular chapter which is often discussed, the 11th chapter of the Gita, which describes Lord Krishna's Virat Rupa. So I wanted to read to you from the 11th chapter, text number 53. Naham Veder na tapasya na danena na chejaya shakya evam vido drastum dristavan asimam itaha. The translation and the purport are by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation. The form you are seeing with your transcendental eyes, Arjuna, cannot be understood simply by studying the Vedas, nor by undergoing serious penances, nor by charity, nor by worship. It is not by these means that one can see me as I am. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Krishna first appeared before his parents, Devaki and Vasudeva, in a four-handed form, and then he transformed himself into the two-handed form. This mystery is very difficult to understand for those who are atheists or who are devoid of devotional service. For scholars who have simply studied Vedic literature by way of grammatical knowledge or mere academic qualifications, Krishna is not possible to understand. Nor is he to be understood by persons who officially go to the temple to offer worship. They make their visit, but they cannot understand Krishna as he is. Krishna can be understood only through the path of devotional service, as explained by Krishna himself in the next verse. Of course, Krishna is well known to everyone. We all have seen paintings, pictures of Krishna, calendars with Krishna's picture on them. So many now are familiar with Maharaj, especially since it has come in a TV series. So it seems strange that Srila Prabhupada should write here that Krishna is difficult to understand or know. What is so difficult to understand? We have seen the picture of Krishna driving the chariot of Arjuna. We have seen a picture of Krishna playing on his flute. We have seen a picture of Krishna lifting Govardhan mountain. We have seen a picture of Krishna as a small child stealing butter. We have seen pictures of Krishna playing with friends. We have seen Krishna and gopis. So why does Prabhupada say it is very difficult to understand Krishna? Why does Krishna himself in this verse say, I can't be understood by studying the Vedas? You won't understand me if you study the Vedas, nor if you undergo tapasya, not either if you give in charity, nor if you worship. These are all activities which normally bring fulfillment of one's desire or prayer. Certainly, Krishna says in the Gita itself, Vedesya sarver aham eva vedyo vedanta krit vedavid eva chaham, that I am the goal of the Vedic studies. In the Bhagavatam, Vasudeva Paraveda, Vasudeva Paramukha. Krishna is the goal of Vedic study. Vasudeva Param Yoga, Vasudeva Parakriya. Krishna is the purpose behind which yoga is performed, to know Krishna. And Kriya, the purification ceremonies, are meant for understanding Krishna. Vasudeva Paragyanam. Our Gyan, Bhaunam, Janmanam, Ante, Gyanamamam Prapadyante, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Krishna is the study, the goal of the study of Gyan. Vasudeva Paratapa. Vasudeva, Krishna, is to be understood or to be realized through tapasya. Vasudeva Paradharma. By doing our dharma, we should come to understand Vasudeva. Vasudeva is another name for Krishna because he's the son of Vasudeva. And Vasudeva Paragati. He is the final goal, the destination. And still he says, not by these means can I be understood. Actually, we can practically experience the truth of the statement. Although we have seen pictures of Krishna, although we may have watched Mahabharata, although we have watched or read Gita, can we actually say that we know Krishna? If you know Krishna, do you think that you would still have all of the calm, krodh, lobh, and other things which are within us? Just as it is said that when the sun rises, Krishna Surya Sam, the sun rises, then Maya becomes, when the sun rises, darkness becomes dispelled. Now it is dark outside. By 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, when the sun rises, the darkness will be completely driven away. So darkness is compared to ignorance, tamaha. And this tamaha, or ignorance, is dispelled when the Krishna Surya, when the sun of Krishna arises in your heart. When Devaki, the mother of Krishna, had the Lord within her, all the devas came and offered their prayers, because they could understand that she is not the same person now. The Lord has taken shelter within her. So when Krishna actually comes within us, or we can say when we can realize Krishna, because Krishna is within us as Paramatma, but we don't remember that. So we are living at home with our family members. No one sits down to eat without making sure that the other family members are also eating. You wouldn't think to sleep at night and not give a place for sleeping to all of your other family members. And probably most of your family members have their own car. But what about the closest of all family members? Paramatma, Krishna. Has he been offered a place to eat, a place to sit, a place to rest? Has he been offered a conveyance to ride in? You may say, well, he's Paramatma, he doesn't need this. You're right, he doesn't, but we need to offer to him. Certainly, Krishna is Atmaram. He is self-sufficient. But we are not self-sufficient. We depend upon the rain, we depend upon the sun, we depend upon the earth. We are fully dependent. Nityo, Nityanam, Chaitanas, Chaitananam, Eko, Ahonam, Yo, Vidati, Panamam. We are eternal, and so is the Lord. But He is maintaining us, and we are maintained by Him. Eko, Ahonam, Yo, Vidati, Panamam. He maintains all living entities. So we are dependent. And yet, we do so little to repay Krishna for all that he does for us. So I think it is not unfair to say, Krishna said, that people do not know me. Although I am everywhere, and although I am in everything, Krishna says to Arjuna, yet I am aloof. He's everywhere, he's everything. How is that? He's everywhere as Paramatma. Antantarashta Paramanu Chayantarashtam, even within the atom. And everything is Krishna. How is that? Everything is the energy of the Lord. His Shakti. There's nothing in existence which is separate from the energies of God. There's the material energy which you are sitting on. There is the spiritual energy which we wish we could sit on in this kingdom of God. There are the in-between energies, the jivas, the living entity, the soul, who are in between. And everything is one of these three energies. Antaranga Shakti, Bahiranga Shakti, and these inside, external energies, and marginal energies. Everything is there. So everything is the energy of the Lord. Parashya Shakti, Vivideva Shriyate, Sabhavaki, Bala, Jnana, Kriya, Cha. Yet, even with all of this jnana, still it is difficult to know Krishna. Arjuna certainly knows Krishna. What is their relationship? Sakha. Friendship. Sakha. They are intimate friends, sometimes sitting together, sometimes reclining together, fighting together, joking together. But yet, Arjuna told Krishna, Krishna, I want to see that form by which you expand yourself everywhere. That is called the Virat Rupa, universal form. Krishna showed it to Arjuna. And when Arjuna saw this form, he was astonished. Actually, he became fearful. Because in that form he saw everyone, all of the soldiers, and gradually those soldiers were being destroyed, entering into that form. Arjuna was able to see the outcome of the battle by looking at that Virat Rupa. And it was very terrible, because Krishna told Arjuna, except for you Pandavas, everyone else will perish. At the end, Arjuna said, my Lord, I have seen enough. Now show me your four-armed form. That four-armed form is sometimes called Narayan, sometimes called Vishnu, and sometimes called Vasudeva. In four-armed form of the Lord. And then after Krishna assumed his four-armed form, Arjuna said, now I would like to see your original form, Swayam Rupa. Then Krishna appeared in his original Swayam Rupa form, two arms. It is mentioned, Ete Chansa Kalaha Pumsa Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam. This form is considered to be the best of all. And he says here, it is the most difficult. The form you are seeing with your transcendental eyes cannot be understood by all of these means. This is the point now we're coming to. The universal form you could understand perhaps by studying the Vedas. Because the universal form is a type of philosophical form. It is explained by the Acharyas that it is not a permanent form, the Virat Rupa. It is a form made up of everything in the universe. The sun, the moon are the two eyes of that form. The trees are the hairs of the body of that form. The ocean is the belly of that form. In other words, everything in existence is imagined to be somewhere on that Virat Rupa. Therefore, it is called a philosophical form. It helps us to understand that God is everything and everything is God. And that is called the first step in God realization. Not the final step, first step. Because before you get on the step, what is the position? Atheism. Atheism means not to accept God at all. So from the position of not accepting God to the position of accepting God, the first step is to understand God in the form of nature. And you see some religions are like that. For example, Shinto, Japanese religion of Shintoism, they worship nature. Even in India we see some groups worship nature. Fire, for example. Parsis worship fire. So, and they even so many ways. There are different ways of worshiping nature as representations of God. All that is great in this world is a representation of God. It is the first step of believing in God, because God is great. So if something is great, it can be said to be a representation of God. So in that sense, we can say that by studying the Vedas, you may get to see the universal form. Similarly, by doing, as it mentions in this verse, tapasya. By doing tapasya, you may come to the point of understanding Paramatma. Paramatma is the super soul within the heart. Who does tapasya? Yogis. And what do yogis worship? They worship the Paramatma within the heart. So they can get to one day see the Paramatma realization. They have this ability. Dana. Now, offering charity, wealth, or gifts of some type. What is the result of dana, giving dana? It depends. You may go up to Svargaloka if you give sufficient quantities of charity. Or even higher than Svargaloka. There are some planets which are above the Svargaloka planets. And if you are very intelligent, like Bali Maharaj, he gave so much dana, because who came to accept his gift? Vamandev. And so Bali Maharaj, he became a great devotee of the Lord. So there is a planet in Vaikuntha, in the kingdom of God, in the spiritual sky. The Lord has his four-armed form as Vamandev. So if you can give in charity to the Supreme Lord, you can rise up to Vaikuntha. You can see the four-armed form of God. But Krishna says, none of these things will qualify you for seeing me. Even he says, not even by worship. Ichyaya. Not by worship. Now you may say, well, why is that? I'm going to the temple. I am worshiping. As a matter of fact, I am even, some of you, if you like, there's space here, you can sit down here. There's ample room here.
Come on, bro.
Please.
Move this
Come in.
side.
If you like. Can come in.
Come on, all the way.
So at our temple, we are worshiping Radha Krishna, right? Perhaps most of you have visited our temple in Houston. Anyone not visited? How have you managed to do that? Certainly you are a very special person. Well, I give you a personal invitation. Please come to visit our temple. So, why does Krishna say that I cannot even be understood by those who do worship? Because worship is done, you see, Prabhupada has mentioned here, nor can Krishna be understood by persons who officially go to the temple to offer worship. They make their visit, but they cannot understand Krishna as he is. What is the point here? Official visit. What does that mean, official visit? I see it all the time. Sometimes I give the class in the morning, and people come in, and they make their namaskar to the deity, and they go out, and I'm not even sure if they saw the deity. They certainly saw their own prayers, their own desires, but whether they actually saw the deity is another question altogether. In other words, what is the quality? Now we come to the point. What is the quality? Now we have said what is not the quality for understanding Krishna. What is that quality which must be there? What is the ingredient that must be there if one wants to know Krishna? Please, our learned audience, can you supply the answer? By devotion. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tattva. I can only be understood by devotion. What kind of devotion? Is the devotion to be mixed devotion or pure devotion? Pure devotion. Kevala Bhakti. Not Mishra Bhakti. Mishra with what? Jnana Mishra Bhakti, Karma Mishra Bhakti, mixing in desires. Then you will not be able to understand Krishna. You may understand another form, but you will not get to know Krishna. Now, devotion, therefore, is something very special. How do we get devotion? Where does this bhakti come from? What's the beginning of bhakti? What's the first step that you have to have for bhakti to take effect? Shraddha. Faith. Faith. Where do you get faith? Does it come from the air? Where do you find this faith? It comes, sometimes it's called agata sukriti. It comes through pious activity. Punya, sukriti. But what kind of pious activity? Does it come by digging a well? I mean, this is an old tradition now. What's the question of digging a well in Houston? Unless it's an oil well. Houston, you can dig oil wells. In the past, you could do pious activity by digging a well or planting a tree. Here, you can only dig oil wells and plant what kind of tree? Cactus trees. No. You won't get bhakti from such activities. Even if you planted a pious tree, even if you dug a well, even if you did so much charity, this is punya, but it doesn't give the kind of punya that you need for bhakti. What kind of punya, what kind of pious activity is required? Can anyone say? The answer is given to hear, even unknowingly, from a devotee of the Lord. To have some contact with Krishna's devotee, somehow or other. To come in contact with the devotee of the Lord is the pious activity which can develop faith. That means you may hear the devotee chanting. For example, we see Hare Krishna people, they go out on the city streets sometime and chant Hare Krishna. And you may be walking there and the chanting is heard. That chanting is punya, it is sukriti, but it is not like any other type of sukriti, because it is the sukriti that leads to bhakti. Another thing, someone may just give you a Bhagavad Gita. So you may not even ask for it, or you may be at home and you find Bhagavad Gita lying there and you start looking through the pages. This will increase faith, will develop some degree of faith. What is another very easy way to get faith from a devotee? Prasad. Prasad. We distribute prasadam, just like during a festival. Let us say Ratha Yatra festival, where we take Jagannath Swami on the Rath. We will distribute small bags of prasadam, thousands and thousands, and people may catch a bag. Supposing we do Ratha Yatra on 5th Avenue in New York every year. We distribute maybe 20,000 bags of Mahaprasadam. Someone catches a bag of Mahaprasadam and thinks, oh, some snack. They don't have any idea whatsoever what it is. And they eat it. That will create Shraddha. Prasadam of the deity is so powerful. How do we know that? There are examples that one Brahmin had taken prasad and a tiger ate him, and the tiger became liberated. This is an example given in one of the Puranas. Another example of chanting the holy name, a similar example, that a Brahmin was chanting and he was killed and eaten by a tiger, and he heard the holy name even though it was an animal. One Rakshasa ate a Brahmin, a man-eater ate a Brahmin, and the Brahmin was chanting his mantras, and the Rakshasa got the bread. So, of course, these are extreme examples, just to give us some understanding of the power of prasad, the power of the holy name. But the first thing in bhakti that must be there is shraddha. Avajananti manmudha manushintaram ashritam param bhavam ajananto mahabhutameshana. Persons who have no shraddha, when they hear about Krishna, they simply think ordinary human being. For them, the idea of God having a form means that that form must be a material form. They cannot envision that God can have a form. But actually we hear from Gita that Krishna's form is not material. There are so many verses where Krishna is explaining the importance of worshipping the form. Like Shotikata Tashtesham Avyakta Shaktasam. Avyakta here, to hear Buddham. He says that one who worships the formless Brahman has only difficulties. In the second verse of the next chapter, you'll find this verse. Maya Vesho Mano Yemam Niti Yukta Pashate Shradhaya Pariopetas Teme Yukta Tamamadaha. Those who worship my form are the best of all persons. Janma Karma Chame Divyam Yogam Vetitattataha Takta Deham Puna Janma Naiti Mameti Sawachana. Krishna says, if you remember Janma Karma, my birth or my activities, you'll never take your birth again in this world. So if Krishna's form is material, why should remembering it give you liberation? Remembering something material doesn't create liberation. Because Krishna's form is not material. It is Satchit Ananda Vigraha. Eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. But we may say, a form means limited. No, not the form of Krishna. Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadi, Ananta. Adyam, Purana, Purusham, Navayoganamcha. Vedesha, Durlabam, Adurlabam, Matmabhakto. Govindam, Adi, Purusham, Tamaham Bhajami. Krishna says, Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadi, Ananta Rupam. What is Ananta Rupam? Unlimited forms. That one form of Krishna is the source of unlimited forms. Ramadi, Murteshu, Kalanya, Menakishtam, Ram, Nishringa, Varaha, and all the expansions of Vishnu are all originally coming from this one form of Govinda. Govindam, Adi Purusha. What is Adi Purush? The original person. Govinda is the original person. Even Shankaracharya, who is the impersonalist guru, he's the acharya of the Mayavadis, of those who say that there is Nirakar. Shankara is their acharya. He says, Vajra Govinda, Vajra Govinda, Vajra Govinda, Mudhamate. He was talking to his own disciples at the end of his life. He said, you should just worship Govinda, you fools and rascals. Why? Because the form of Krishna actually will bring bliss. Ananda. Nirakar, there is no Ananda. Maybe there is some Ananda, Brahmananda. But the Ananda that comes from Brahma, it says that oceans of such Ananda cannot equal one little drop of the Ananda that you will get by having love, Priti, for Krishna. But this is not an easy thing, because in order to get this Priti, this prema for Krishna, you have to develop bhakti. And where's the time to do bhakti when you have to work 5 days a week, 9 to 5? What is the question of doing Devalo bhakti? It's so hard to do bhakti. we were hearing today from our host, Radhesham. He was telling me about delivering, that he had to deliver one suitcase to one village in Rajasthan, his home state. Went way into the village on a bus and then got off the bus, and the only way he could go into the inner part, interior, was on a camel. So one camel driver took him. He said, "Baba, why have you come here?" He said, "I've come to deliver this suitcase." He said, "You took so much trouble to deliver this suitcase to someone?" He was a student at the time. He came from Pilan in Rajasthan into this interior village to deliver someone's suitcase. He said, "Yes, I came." He said, "You didn't have to get off the bus. You could have given it to me. I would have taken it for you." Such a nice camel driver. Nice Rajasthani person. He went to the village. The family was so happy that the camel driver was sitting outside. He said, "Take your time. Whenever you come, I'm ready to take you back to the bus." And in this way, he passed his time there. No anxiety. But today's world, what is it like? Every moment, digital time. No longer is the hands of the clock with us. We have to know split-second timing. We're in so much anxiety. Actually, they have made studies and they say that digital clocks are making people go crazy. Because at least when the hands would move around, you would get a sense of the day's journey, the sun's journey through the day, and then the moon's journey through the night. The hands of the clock would give you that feeling. The digital time, it's not like that. It's just, it's like a heartbeat. And your heart is beating, on and on, and there's only a limited number of heartbeats. So it's putting people in great anxiety. So what is the question of Bhakti in this circumstance? We are in such a difficult time. Fortunately, there is a redeeming factor in this age. Kali Yuga Yuga Dharma Namir Prachara Tathe Bhakti Pitadharna Chaitanya Avatar. In this age, the Lord comes in a very special form. He comes with a special color. Pita Varna. Pita means yellowish color. Why yellowish color? Golden color. Gaura. He comes in a golden color. Krishna Varna Tvish Krishna. Not in the blackish form of Krishna. Krishna comes in a form that's not blackish. He comes in a golden form. Why? Because Krishna's counterpart is Radha. And Radha's name is Gaurani. Because her color, just like the spice, haldi, turmeric. But when you get turmeric, when it has some juice still in it, right? If you smash it, that color is the color of Srimati Radharani. It is a golden type of color, very beautiful color. So Krishna comes in the color of Radha. Krishna and Radha come together in one form. Inside it is Krishna, and outside the color is Radha's color. And that person is known as Gauranga. Lord Gauranga, Lord Chaitanya. And what does he come for? He comes to deliver the Yuga Dharma. What is the Yuga Dharma? In the Sati Yuga, the Yuga Dharma is yoga. Astanga Yoga. Valmiki Muni, for example, how long did he do yoga for? 60,000 years. Where is the digital watch that can calculate 60,000 years? In the Sati Yuga, yoga was the means, and the time for living was 100,000 years. In the Treta Yuga, the system of Dharma was by yajna, very big sacrifices, yajna. And the time of one's life was 10,000 years. In Dwarka Yuga, the Yuga Dharma is through worship in the temple. And one can live up to 1,000 years. But in the Kali Yuga, when we can only expect to live for how long? Huh? No one thinks they can live 100 years. That is actually what you're supposed to live in Kali Yuga. At the beginning of Kali Yuga, which began about 5,000 years ago, you could expect to live 100 years. But who expects that now? It's very rare. Now, 75, you're doing all right. So in this age, when the lifespan has reduced, Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagya Upakita, lifespan has reduced, memory has reduced. It is reduced. You can say that the reason, that we have these computers and calculators with fantastic memories shows how much more elevated we are. But there's another way to look at it. It shows how incapable of remembering anything we are. How many times did Arjuna have to hear the Bhagavad Gita? I myself am reading it hundreds of times, and still I have to learn Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna didn't even read it, just heard it one time, and he remembered everything perfectly. That was the memory from the previous age. They didn't need computers. You see, we think we're more advanced because we've developed computers. But computers are simply a replacement for our human capabilities. Actually, the human being was so highly evolved that he didn't need these things, just like airplanes. The humans in Sakya, they could travel. You see, at least you read about it, how Devarshi Narad Muni travels without spacecraft. And it wasn't only he. All the yogis had this ability. They could travel freely. So today's human beings are a far cry from what they were in the past ages. For example, what was the size of Arjuna? You know how tall Arjuna was? 16 foot. Did they show that in the Maharaj? No. 16 foot. Imagine what will happen with the building codes in Houston. Nobody builds a ceiling more than what? 10 foot, 11 foot, 12 foot is, very unusual. 13 foot is really opulence. But 16 foot, no one even dreams about it. We are practically like pygmies. If someone is 6 foot, Texans are very proud of being very tall. But compared to Arjuna, they're pygmies. They say that on the bumper sticker, it's hard to be humble when you're from Texas. It's hard to be humble because they never read Maharaj. They don't know that they did truth, therefore they're so puffed up. But if they actually understood everything, they would realize that they're like pygmies. So, in this day and age, when we are poor in memory, poor in intelligence, unfortunate. Why are we unfortunate? You drive your car tonight, how many living entities will you kill? Without trying, but it will happen. So many bugs are losing their life smashed by our windshield. So we're unfortunate. When you rode in the camel, when Sharmaji was in his camel car, I don't think he probably killed many bugs. Life moved at a much more human speed. Now we're very proud. But the speed that we move at, we don't realize so many living entities are losing their life. So we're unfortunate. In so many ways we're unfortunate. Just like when I see the children nowadays. My secretary here is from Singapore. See, he said to me, no, his brother is also from Singapore. He's a dentist from Singapore. So he said to me that, actually it wasn't me, it was my other servant, who's from France. This is the proof that memory is very important. So he was at a program the other night and he was looking at the children. He's from France. So he was looking at the children. He said, these children are just like American children. I said, they are Americans. He said, but their bodies are, their parents are from India. So in some ways they're Indian children. I said, no, they're American children. He said, actually, by their behavior and by the way they think, they are Americans. Now, what does that mean? That means watching television. That means going to school and associating with all other American friends and developing the habits of America. Now, are they as fortunate as the habits that one would have developed in that village in Rajasthan? I doubt. Despite the fact that you can claim that your son or daughter knows how to work a computer by the age of 7, I suspect that the child in that Rajasthani village is more fortunate. I think of course these children are also very fortunate because they're able to sit here and it's very good. I have to admit that all those of you who are here are actually sitting very nicely. But sometimes we see, at least at one program we held, the children couldn't sit still for a moment. They're so disturbed and agitated. Otherwise, I have seen children who are peaceful, brought up in the right, they can sit peacefully, very peacefully for a long time. So, I should get to the point. So with all of this unfortunate conditioning, what is the Yuga Dharma for the Kali Yuga? What is this Yuga Dharma that we are meant to do? Is it going to be yoga? Do you think you can do yoga now? Without the phone ringing all the time, without the wife or the mother-in-law screaming, or the children saying something? You really think that you can sit like Valmiki Muni and do yoga? Can we do yajna, as we have read about yajna during the Rajasuya sacrifice, during Ramchandra's time when they did yajnas, where all the items were made of gold, and when the yajna was over, they threw it away. You know, when Yudhisthira Maharaj wanted to do a big Rajasuya, they needed money. So then they went and they found a mountain of gold with so many items from a previous time when they had been doing yajna. One king had left everything, the pots, the spoons, everything, solid gold. And when it was over, they just threw it away. As we throw out paper plates, they threw away gold. Can we do such yajna nowadays? No, certainly not. Certainly not. You can't do yajna, and temple worship. Again, our friend Radhesham was saying that he grew up in Jaipur. In Jaipur, the beautiful temple of Radha Govinda. And he was saying, was it your mother was saying, Mai Govinda? Huh? Landlady. The landlady would say, I have to go see Mai Govinda. The deity's name there is Radha Govinda. It's a very famous, beautiful deity. It's a very old deity, 5,000 years old deity, which was established by Krishna's great grandson, Brajana. So, she said, I have to go see my Govindaji. And in Jaipur, that temple was so popular that nearly everyone in the town must see a deity before they begin their day's activities. They just feel it's just like if you're living at home and your mother was there or father was there, you wouldn't think of leaving for work or going to school without first touching your feet and paying your respects. No one would think of beginning the day without seeing Govindaji. But now today, we have our Radha Krishna, Radha Nilamata. How many of you can go every morning before going to NASA or going to your office to have darshan of the deities? You'll lose your job. Or you'll get stuck in a traffic jam. See, or some horrible thing will happen. It's no possibility. So what is the question of temple worship nowadays? It's not possible. Sundays at best you can do it, and how many people can even come every Sunday? Very few. With great difficulty and at great sacrifice can one come. When you start coming every Sunday, your social life will dwindle. So, temple worship is also out of the question. So what is left for we poor, unfortunate souls of the Kali? It is said, Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam. Kalua naskeva, 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 gatir anura. There's no other way in this age except Harinama, Harinama, Harinama. Therefore, what is the name of this movement of ours? Hare Krishna movement. Very nice name. What is the name of the person who established this movement? Probably nobody here even knows. At least very few. Now, it is that Prabhupada, our Guru Maharaj, never named this society after himself. Nor he would have ever allowed it to be that way. He simply wanted it to be known Hare Krishna. Why? Because this is the thing in this age, to chant Hare Krishna. And everyone knows us that, oh, there's a Hare Krishna. In this day and age, the only way is through Harinam. Why? Because Harinam is the Nam avatar. Krishna's name is itself the avatar for the Kali Yuga. Is there a difference between Krishna and his name? No. Nama, Nami, no. The name and Krishna himself, the person who is described by the name, are the same. That is the difference between we and our names. You can change your name. You can go to a court and change it. I may call your name when you leave tonight and you can't hear me. But Krishna and his name are not different. As soon as you vibrate Krishna Nam, Krishna is present. And what is the effect of chanting the holy name of the Lord? Jamil, in the Bhagavatam, the example is given of 6th canto of the Bhagavatam. There was one Brahmin who had a son named Jamil. That son, he used to assist his father. Then later on, one day he was going out to collect some flowers for his father's puja, and he saw on the road a Sudrani, a low-class prostitute, and a man embracing. A thing that is so common to see today, but in those days it was unheard of. And he had never heard or seen such a thing. And his mind became obsessed with this thought, to the extent that he eventually arranged to invite that prostitute to become a servant in his home. And then he became so much attracted to her that eventually he lost all interest in his own family. He kicked them out of the house, and the prostitute and he lived there. And he did all adharmic things. Horrible, horrible, horrible things, which we would never think of doing. Until finally it mentions that he reached the age of, how much? 88. And at that time he had a 2 or 3 year old child. You can imagine what kind of person he had become. Fortunately, he had given the child the name Narayan. So he was used to say, Narayan, come here, sit on my lap. Narayan, do this. Narayan, do this. But this man, Ajamil, he had become a murderer, a thief, every bad habit. Narayan, but he was saying, Narayan, Narayan. And then one day he was on his deathbed. And he called his son, Narayan, Narayan. And he died at that moment. And because of his chanting the holy name, first the Yamadutas came, the messengers from Lord Yama, the god of death came, and they were going to snatch his soul out of the body. But immediately, 4 beautiful persons called Vishnu Dutas came, and they stopped, and they said, you cannot take him. I said, what do you mean? This person is a murderer? He's a thief. He did every horrible possible activity. He's the perfect candidate for us to bring to Yamaraj. He said, no. Why? Because he has chanted the holy name of Lord Narayan. I said, well, so what? They said, you go and ask Yamaraj, so what? Tell him that. So then they went to Yamaloka, and Yamaraj was sitting there. Yamaraj, I mentioned the other day, has a very difficult task. Of all the devas, Yamaraj is the busiest. Because in this day and age, amongst the sinful and the pious, almost everyone is sinful. So Yamaraj works quadruple overtime. So his Yamadutas came to him. His Dutas came and they said, something terrible has happened. We have never had this experience before, and we don't understand. We thought that you were the supreme person. You're the supreme controller, and now we're losing faith in you. I said, why? What has happened? These were horrible-looking creatures, these young people. What has happened? They said, we were stopped. We have found the most sinful person we had ever heard about. You see? And Chitragupta, who was the Yamaraj's scribe, said, they looked his name up, Ajamil, said, oh, this is the topmost sinner. He confirmed to Yamaraj, this is the right person they should have taken. Yamaraj said, what happened? Then they said, we saw these beautiful persons, very nice and decorated with 4 arms, golden crowns, holding club, disc, lotus flower, and what else? And conch shells in their 4 hands. And they said that we couldn't take it. So Yamaraj, of course, is a Mahajan. He is a great devotee of the Lord. Immediately he thought, oh, my servants have gotten darshan of the Narayan Dutas, the Vishnu Dutas. These are so fortunate. How did this happen? He said, how did it happen? He said, they said that we can't take him because he chanted the name of Narayan. And then they said that this name of Narayan is so powerful that it will counteract more sins that the greatest sinner can do in many, many lifetimes. So Yamaraj was just sitting there in ecstasy because for the first time in Yamaloka, he was hearing the glories of Narayan. From Yamaduta, so he became very pleased in his state. So then he began to explain everything. Actually, this is true. And he gave the whole explanation of how important is the name of Narayan. So, in this day and age, there can be no other means for freeing ourselves from sins than the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Even you sit at home, never mind, it's fine. You chant Hare Krishna, you get Japamala, and every morning you fix up a certain number of rounds to chant. It may only be 2 malas, it may be 4 malas. You start at a convenient number and just do this japa. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. You just repeat this and it has such great effect. You cannot understand. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that a little bit of improvement on this path will protect you at the most dangerous time of your life. You're all paying so much money for insurance policies. This costs you nothing at all. That is the problem. You think anything that is free is worthless. I should tell you, if you have to, I should sell you the Javamala for $10,000. Then it must be very powerful. You can't imagine that something free can be so valuable, but actually it is so. Of course it is not free, that is the point. It is not free. It requires your sincere time. And that's more difficult. We are much more willing to pay some money, but the money is also sincere time given. Otherwise, what is money? Money represents all of our time spent in earning it. So you give some time for chanting japa. Never mind, sometimes people say, can I chant even if I'm doing some sins? You cannot sin thinking that I'll sin because I have chanted to protect myself. But even if you have done something sinful, it doesn't mean that you can't chant. You shouldn't think that first I'll stop sinning, then I'll chant. It will never be like that. It goes the other way. First you chant, then you'll stop sinning. So everyone should regularly take up this chanting process and associate with Krishna devotees. As I said, the association of the devotees of Krishna is so valuable because the devotees of Krishna, they can give the bhakti. So we'll stop here and ask for questions. We may have some questions. which are on your mind, perhaps from our talk today or from some previous spiritual readings or discussions. Some questions may be in your mind. So we will allow a few minutes for questions and answers.
Please say that Shiva is one of the greatest devotee of Lord Krishna. And you say today that if you know Krishna, then how can you have all these kama, krodha, and all these desires? But we also hear in Shiva's pastime that he was or he is both. How do you?
The question is that Lord Shiva is one of the topmost devotees of the Lord. And we have heard that those who are devotees of Krishna should not have kam, krodha, lobh, matsarya, etc. And yet we have heard that Shiva is krodhi. First of all, Shiva is called not krodhi but tamasi. He is the Lord of Tamakun, but he is not to be considered to be under the effect of Tamakun. Shiva is Param Vaishnava. Vaishvananam Yatashambhu. Of all the Vaishnavas, he is the greatest of all. He is the greatest worshipper of all of Vishnu. You have seen pictures of Shiva with his Rudraksha Mala sitting in meditation. So it is not true that Shiva is covered by anger. Sometimes a Vaishnava may become angry, but if that ever happens, it is done in service to Krishna. The example is, for example, Arjuna. Krishna spoke Gita for what purpose? To make Arjuna angry. Although he tells Arjuna anger is bad, Kama Esha, Krodha Esha, Rajaguna Samudbhava. What is the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita? That Arjuna gets so angry he kills everyone on the battlefield. But is that killing done in ordinary material anger? Is Hanuman's anger a material anger? No. It is part of bhakti. Because bhakti doesn't mean without emotion. When one becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, every emotion becomes spiritualized. All emotions become spiritualized. As far as Lord Shiva is concerned, he is not known for his anger, he's known for his tolerance. He's the most tolerant of all persons. So, when we said that one who is angry cannot know Krishna, we don't mean the kind of anger that Arjuna has. That is special. That is an anger which is directed by the Lord. Just like violence. Is violence a good thing or a bad thing? Is it good or bad to be violent? What does a surgeon do? A surgeon commits violence. But is it good or bad? It's good because the violence is done with intelligence, with knowledge, with guidance. So violence in itself is neither good or bad. Anger is not good or bad. Money is not good or bad. What is good, what is bad, depends on whether or not it is used in the service of God. Now, if you say that this seems to mean that you're encouraging anger or violence, of course not. We're not doing anything of the kind. I'm only trying to say that what is good? Good is the Lord. He is all good. And those who serve Him are good. And service to Him is good. What is bad? Forgetfulness of God. And those who forget God will certainly have so many bad qualities. Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana samai gunas tattva samasapesara. Anyone who is a devotee of the Lord has all the good qualities of the demigods. But anyone who is not a devotee of the Lord has no ultimately good qualities, because they will all be spoiled. Just like we say that if you make sweet rice. You know that here, if you make sweet rice, rice mixed with milk and sugar, but if instead of sugar, if you put salt, ooh, it spoils everything. In the same way, even someone may have so many nice qualities, but if they don't have devotion to God, it's like salt in the sweet rice. On the other hand, if someone has that one quality, then even with all the other bad things, just like Ajamil. Ajamil had so many bad qualities. He had only one good quality. On his lips was the name of Lord Narayana. And that was enough to deliver him. On the other hand, look at Ravana. Ravana was a great demon, a Rakshasa. He was the enemy of Ram, but he was a great follower of the Vedas. How do you think he got the kind of position he got? He was a big Vedic follower. But do we think of Ravana as a great person? Do we think that he was very noble? No. Why? Because he was not a devotee. So someone who's not a devotee has no good qualities, despite all so-called good qualities. And someone who is a devotee, even with all bad things, still is counted as a good person. Another question? Some of our friends who have come to know some questions. Any question, even from your readings? Anyone? All right, you ask.
You mentioned earlier that chanting the name is often feel better. So, the same level, when I come to the opportunity on such appreciation of the big session, people think that if we are not in the river, we do nicely without any fault. Wait until they hear everything. So,
Your question is about initiation, about chanting. How does that affect the people? Isn't that a better question for the morning Bhakti? I'll answer the question, but whether it's appropriate for people here. His question, Shamsunda's question is that should someone take initiation if they are not what?
they don't feel that they would like to clarify themselves before
They want to first become purified, then take initiation. Our standard in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is that to take initiation you have to chant Hare Krishna mantra 16 malas each day for at least 1 year continuously. And you have to avoid eating meat, fish or eggs, onions and garlic, no gambling, no intoxication, including no tea, coffee, or cigarettes, and no illicit sex life. All for at least 1 year. If you do those things, and you have also to do some service for the temple, then you should take initiation. The answer is yes, such a person should take initiation. Initiation will help you in so many ways. By establishing connection with the line of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you get so much benefit for chanting Hare Krishna. Therefore, to take initiation from Gaudiya Vaishnava Guru Acharya helps us because we get connection with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the person who has come to deliver the holy name to the world. Another question. Many guests who have come especially today. Alright? Yes.
But just remembering Krishna in your mind different from chanting.
Yes. The question is remembering Krishna as good as chanting? No. Because while remembering Krishna, we don't find that you get in Shastra, it doesn't give the same example. The examples come from Kirtan. In Kirtan, just by the holy name being on the lips, you can get deliverance. But the remembrance of Krishna has to be very complete, which is called samadhi. Samadhi means you have to come to full absorption to get the perfection of smarana. But Kirtan is more powerful than smarana. Kirtan is so much more powerful. Therefore, in this age, Kirtan is more. Kirtan will lead to smarana. But trying for smarana without Kirtan is very difficult. You try to just sit and keep Krishna always within your mind. Without doing japa, without doing Kirtan, it will be very difficult. But if you do Kirtan, then automatically it becomes very easy to keep Krishna remembered. Krishna remembers. Kirtan is more important, more valuable. Certainly the goal is smarana, but the means is Kirtan. So just to try for the goal without the means, no use.
Can we come by practice?
Smarana, no. The method of smarana, Krishna smarana, is Shravanam Kirtan. Hearing and chanting of Krishna will lead to Krishna smarana.
Samadhi is the ultimate goal where you reach by all the processes of yoga. So it is very difficult to reach Samadhi unless you have gone to the physical process itself. And that is through Kirtan and Bhajan and all that.
Yeah. The system of yoga generally means Astanga yoga. But Astanga yoga, just like pranayam, niyam, pranayam, all of this, is for the Sati Yuga especially. It is not recommended in this age because it requires many thousands of years. You'll see in 6th chapter of Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, you have to go to a sacred place, you have to sit down perfectly straight, you have to control your breathing, control your eating, and then Arjuna says, the system which you have recommended is very, very difficult to do. He said, I think it is more difficult to control the mind by that system than to control the raging wind. 5,000 years ago, a person as highly qualified as Arjuna could not do that yoga. What to speak of us today? But the same samadhi, which was possible to be achieved in Sati Yuga, can be achieved today by Kirtanam and Shravanam Kirtanam. The same exact samadhi can be achieved. Because you have to do the Yuga Dharma. You have to adjust the system for the age. But unfortunately, so many people don't know this, so they, we see today the yoga societies are there. Most yoga societies are for losing weight. They're exercise for people who don't want to go to a gym. So they do yoga to keep their waist slim. But actually, for samadhi yoga in this age, it's not possible. But there has to be some method. Otherwise, you won't get samadhi. Actually, what is the word samadhi? To come to the same position, sama. To come to the same position as the Lord Himself. Not to become the Lord, but to get His association. That is called samadhi. Some people don't understand. They think samadhi means that you come to the position of God and become one with God. And you lose your own individuality. No, you lose your false ego. But you don't lose your individuality. For example, Hanuman doesn't become Ram. Hanuman has no false ego. He is Ram Das. There is Ram, there is Sita, there is Lakshmana, there is Hanuman, there is Bharata, there is Shatrugna. There's not just one. And there are all the Ram Bhaktas. And all of them together are in a Yogya Dham, in the spiritual sky. And that same yoga manifested in this world during the time of Ram's appearance. It is a replica of the kingdom of God in the spiritual world, called the Yoga Dham. And it's not that everything is just Ram there. No, there are Ram Das there. So many servants of Ram. So that is Samadhi. Samadhi means to come to the point of entering into the association of God. Another question? Another.
Are all the souls eternal like Krishna, or they were created by Krishna?
Are all the
Souls, are they eternal like Krishna, or they were created by Krishna?
Are all souls eternal like Krishna, or are they created by him? They are all eternal.
Krishna didn't create them? The
No.
souls?
But they depend upon him for their existence. So we say he's the creator. But actually, creation means beginning and end. So only thing that can be created are the forms of this material world. The Gita says there are 5 things. Time, let's see. God, the living entity, the jivas. God, the jivas, time, prakriti, the material energy, and karma. And of these 5, 4 are eternal, and only 1 is temporary. 1 is created, that is karma. So karma, because of karma, we get these bodies. These bodies are created. Creation means with beginning and end, but the soul is never created. In the Gita, it says that Mai Vangsha, Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta, Sanatana. Sanatana means eternal. The living entities are my eternal fragmental parts and parcels. The example is given like the sun and the sun rays. As long as there's a sun, there's always sun rays. You don't have first the sun, then sun rays. But because the sun rays come from the sun, depend upon the sun, we say that their source is the sun. Similarly, because we are coming from God, not that we had at the time when we did not exist, but because we are dependent upon Him or come from Him, it's sometimes said that we are created by God. But actually, that is a Christian concept. It's a Judeo-Christian concept. It's not from Vedas. Now, if we are eternal and God is eternal, then it means we also have eternal relationship. So therefore we say that we have forgotten Him. Since time eternal, since time immemorial, we have forgotten our relationship with God. But love of God is there within us, but it is forgotten. Now it has to be revived. The chanting of Hare Krishna, Maha Mantra, revives our lost remembrance of our relationship with God.
How do you forget?
Yeah, that question is like if there's a big fire and you say, how did this fire start? First of all, you get out of the fire. Then we will investigate. We're starting the fire. So instead of worrying about how we forgot, there are answers to this. But the real fact is we have certainly forgotten. Whatever may be the cause, now here we are. So what are we going to do about it? Are we going to remain forgetful or revive our remembrance of God? Some other question? And let us chant Hare Krishna mantra.
Yes. What is a liberation? Is it Krishna can only give liberation, or the demigod can give liberation up to their limit?
Liberation, it depends. Just like we see in the Jai and Vijay. Jai and Vijay took 3 births. They took birth first as Hiranyakasipu and Hiranyaksha, and they were killed by Nrsimhadev. Jai and Vijay are the guards at Vaikuntha gates of Narayana. The second birth, they took birth as Ravana and Kumbhakarna, and they were killed by Ram. In the third birth, they took birth as Shishupal and Dantavakra, and they were killed by Krishna. So in this case, Krishna liberated them. And the other two, they did not get liberated, although they were killed. So, this proves what? It proves that sometimes when the Sringadev or Ram kill, even then you don't get liberation. Sometimes you do. Generally you may, but not always, because in their case they didn't. But when Krishna kills, everyone gets liberation who kills. So liberation is of different types. First of all, no deva can give liberation. An ordinary demigod, even up to Brahma or Shiva, cannot give liberation. Only Vishnu Tattva deities. That means Narayan, Vamadev, Krishna, Ram, Nrsimhadev, Varahadev, different deities like this, they can give liberation. What does liberation mean? It depends on your goal. For some, liberation means to merge in Brahman, to become an undifferentiated particle of light in Brahman. But we don't want that kind of liberation, because there is no love in such liberation. We want the liberation of entering into the planet of the Lord in the spiritual world and having a personal loving relationship with Him. Alright, let us stop here now, and we will chant Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Now, I will stop. You remember I said so much about chanting. Even one time the value will be there. So please don't sit there and think that this is a musical entertainment. Of course, with a voice like mine, you won't have to think that. So just not to embarrass me by making me the only one who sings. If I had a sweet voice like our Sri Devi, then it would be alright. But since I have a voice, it's not so sweet. Huh? Oh yes. And while we are doing the kirtan, we will be doing an arati ceremony. So I'm going to chant, and you also please chant along. First I will chant, and you chant back and forth. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Krishna All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees.